Here at the Providence College podcast, we bring you interesting stories from the Fryer family. And often the most interesting stories at PC are told by students at the annual celebration of student scholarship and creativity, which marks its 10th anniversary this year. Today, we're talking with Dr. Jennifer Van Reet and Amy Goggin from PC's Center for Engaged Learning, which coordinates the celebration. Dr. Van Reet has taught psychology at PC for 11 years and has served on the undergraduate research committee for a decade. Amy Goggin, a member of the class of 1993, is Assistant Director of Engaged Learning. She started working on PC's second annual celebration of student scholarship and creativity and has been a part of it ever since. Dr. Van Reet, Amy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be on the podcast. We appreciate it. We love talking about engaged learning.
Let's start with something very basic. What is engaged learning and how do you define it?
Engaged learning is actually something that we hope students can do in all parts of their Providence College education. And we have come to define engaged learning as what happens when students really take ownership over their learning and make choices and decisions purposefully and intentionally about their education and its path. So you can do that sitting in a Civ lecture, even though all of our students are required to take Civ. You can choose to be engaged while you are sitting in Civ, but you can also choose to be engaged in your learning by finding a really interesting question and then trying to do a research project about it, or learning about a problem that you're really passionate about and then going out and doing a community service project related to that. So there's so many different ways to be engaged in your learning, whether it's in the classroom or out of the classroom. It's what happens whenever students decide that, you know what, I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to find a new answer. I'm going to ask a new question. It's when you go from just sitting back and hearing something to trying to do something more about it.
Kind of act on what you're learning.
It's a very active process. Absolutely.
So how do students benefit when they take a more active approach or get engaged with their learning?
That's a great question. I think that the main benefit is that you learn more. So you can learn a lot by being passive, by sitting in a class and listening to a professor talk. You get a lot of information that way. You get a lot of information in a very short amount of time. That's for sure. Or by, reading an assigned reading, skimming through it. You definitely can get a lot of information. And we have so much information out there these days that sometimes that's the way you have to learn, by listening to somebody who already knows about it or by reading somebody who wrote something who's an expert. But to really understand what you're learning is a process which needs to be active. It requires you to actually think through it purposefully, to try to get around it, try to get at new angles and different sides and different perspectives. So I think the real benefit of being engaged and active is that you learn about something in a much more powerful and a much more deep, a much more conceptual way. It's also, importantly, much more fun to be active and engaged in your learning and not just sort of sitting back and passive. And we know that if something's fun, then you're more willing to spend time on it, which means that there's kind of this feedback effect.
You've mentioned a couple of examples of how of engaged learning, research projects, community service. Are there other examples that you could name?
We see lots of such cool examples, and students are always coming up with things that we haven't even thought of. So in addition to the research projects, which happen in every single discipline, community service projects, we see students who are doing internships at lots of different places, hospitals, government institutions. They really run the gamut. And we have students who are doing creative work. So they are producing their own art or music or their own theater productions, which is really exciting. And so really anything that you can do in one of the many varied disciplines and majors we have here on campus, we see students doing it. And, again, what's often really fun about my job, one of the things I love about it the most is that sometimes students show me new ways to be engaged in their learning that I had never thought about before.
It sounds like it's also an opportunity for students to use other skills that you can't really learn in books: leadership, management, organization.
Absolutely. That is so true. So, in order to be active and engaged in your learning, you have to engage lots of other parts of your life. And so you have to be self-directed, which means that you have to have really great time management skills. You have to be motivated to create a plan, to figure out how you are going to find out the information you need to, or talk to the people who have resources that you need or information that you need. So it takes a lot of time management. You have to be dependable and reliable. If you're doing a group project, with so many of the projects that we see at the annual celebration are group projects, not individual projects, that takes a lot of collaborative skills. You have to know how to work in a team. And then it just takes a lot of really critical thinking and problem solving skills. So when you are engaged in one of these really interesting research projects or internships, a lot of times things happen and you have to figure out what to do. And so we need our students to be creative, and they are.
The college has been showcasing student research and engaged learning at the annual celebration for a decade. Why did PC go ahead and create this event way back in 2009?
I think it kind of started with the start of undergraduate research and promoting that and getting students more involved, and then showcasing it. And it's grown so much. I think we started around 30 projects, and it's more than tripled since then. We're well over 100 each year.
Can you give us a picture of what that looked like in those early days? Where did those, was it all in the fishbowl?
No, the very first two, I believe, were in Lower Slavin. So kind of in the hallways by McPhail's. And then I think the third one we moved upstairs, used the atrium and the fishbowl. And then as it started to grow, we moved into 64 Hall and kind of took over Upper Slavin.
And was it all students who were doing science research, or how many different?
It's been pretty much across all the majors. We have obviously a lot of biology and chemistry and engineering, physics, but we get quite a few social work projects, history projects, the studio arts and art history and theater. And we've been able to have a few theater performances as well, and music too. So pretty much across all the majors, I would say, have been involved.
And how else has it changed? Have you been able to adapt or grow to incorporate anything else?
I think how we're displaying student work is changing. We've gotten better with the studio art projects, I think, and bringing more like digital signage in so they can show videos. And we're moving it over to the Center for Moore Hall this year too. So I think that's going to bring a different aspect to it as well.
Definitely. So it's sort of traveling around campus. It used to be at home in Slavin, and now the Center at Moore Hall will be its place. Now, it's hard to imagine that this is going to be the first year for the annual celebration without Dr. Stephen Mecca, who was a PC alum and engineering professor, who died before the start of the school year. Can you tell us a little bit about Dr. Mecca's involvement and how you're planning to honor him this year?
Steve was always a huge champion of undergraduate research at Providence College. And I think, Amy counted up for us, over 70, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Over 70 of his students over the years have presented their work at the celebration. And that actually just represents a fraction of the students that Steve worked with over the years. But he maintained a lab, the S Lab, that involved lots of different students, and not just engineering and physics majors, but he had students from all disciplines working with him, because he was really interested in not only interdisciplinary work, but solving really important problems in an interdisciplinary way. And so, something kind of funny, to be honest, we actually kind of expected a lower number of projects and student submissions this year, just because we knew that we wouldn't have as many from Steve. We do have some of Steve's students who are still presenting this year, who have continued the work, which is awesome. But because we knew that there were going to be fewer, we actually thought we would see a dip this year. Turns out we didn't, which is great. But, that's one of the things that even in planning the celebration, we used to count on a certain number of projects because Steve sent so many over. We did really want to honor his contributions and his commitment to undergraduate research. And so what we're doing this year is that we're going to open the celebration with a small session, kind of an intimate session that really highlights Steve's contributions over the years. We'll have a couple of his former students and colleagues talking about him and the types of themes that he is interested in. And then going forward in the future, we are hoping to highlight any project on campus that is displayed that fits one of the 4 themes that he was really interested in. And those are health, sanitation, education, and technology. And so what this looks like going forward, of course, will evolve. We don't have all the details yet, but we plan to, any student submission from anywhere on campus that fits one of those themes will get a little designation. And that's a way of us really just highlighting how important Steve was to this campus and how important those themes are, especially looking at them in an interdisciplinary way.
That's neat, though, because it's so basically honoring Steve's spirit and have it continue on, as his legacy goes on. That's really touching and moving, and I'm sure he would be touched to know that that he's left this imprint on the campus this way in student research. I
hope so. And like I said, this is really still evolving, and we're happy to hear from the campus community and the people who knew and loved Steve the most and knew him the best and worked with him and about the best way to do this. And this is where we're going to start, but I know it will grow going forward.
What are some of the challenges trying to help students answer those questions and get more engaged in their work? I mean, what are the hurdles that you have to overcome to get them to the point where they're presenting at annual celebration?
That's also a really great question. I actually wish that I knew the complete answer to that. We're working on that. I think that, there's a couple different things. First is that we don't always expect students to be engaged in their learning. We sort of tell them that, okay, you're going to come to this class, and a lot of classes you're going to listen to lectures and write notes and read all these texts and write papers. And so I think as a faculty member, when I do those sorts of things, I give lectures, I assign papers, I assign readings, I sort of expect that my students are going to be engaged at their learning, and I hope that they are. But we don't do a great job, I think, of teaching students how to be engaged learners. Really just explicitly telling them, like, these are the things that you have to do when you're reading or when you're listening. And so at the Center for Engaged Learning, we're thinking a lot about how to help students and faculty and staff and everybody on campus better communicate and better teach students how to be more engaged in their learning, because really it's not fair to expect something out of a student if we haven't told them that this is what they're supposed to be doing. So that's one thing, is just communicating to students better that we do expect them to be engaged. And so I think one part of this is just giving them basic, foundational skills. And then, another part of that is developing the capacity to have them do all these really interesting projects. So making sure that we have enough internship opportunities and research opportunities and creative opportunities for all the students who want to take advantage of that sort of thing. And we've done here on campus, just in the 11 years I've been here, a great job at, I think, creating more of those types of opportunities. I'm most familiar with the research since I've been on the research committee. When I got to PC, we didn't even have a research committee. So now the fact that we have one and that we're funding, nearly 100 students a year is a huge change in the past decade. Of course, there's always room to grow.
Well, let's talk more about the funding opportunities at PC and how the college really supports engaged learning in that way, because it's more than just grants, and that's a huge piece of it. I mean, that's quite a start.
Absolutely. So we do, in addition to the research grants for students, the undergraduate research committee has tried to create a couple other mechanisms to help students get involved in research activity. One is helping departments create more courses where they can involve research into the curriculum. So that's been a really fun challenge. Another program that we just started in a very small way, in a kind of a pilot initiative way, is helping students that have federal work study awards use their federal work study awards to be research assistants, to actually work as research assistants. So that's something very new and very exciting to us. But the Center for Engaged Learning also supports engaged learning through lots of little mini grants and activities. So if a faculty member, for example, as part of his or her class, kind of spontaneously in the middle of the semester, finds out about some sort of off-campus event or some sort of speaker or some sort of opportunity that goes really well with what they're teaching in their class, and they don't have the budget in their department or program to take care of that, the Center for Engaged Learning has a pot of money that we can help with that. So we've helped faculty travel to art museums when there's an art exhibit that matches the content of what they're teaching in their class, or go to a historical site nearby and get a tour of that historical site, or buy tickets to a play where the play is directly related to what you're learning in class. And so we try to do whatever we can when these opportunities pop up.
For some students, annual celebration is almost the beginning of how they present and share their research. Could you talk a little bit more about how the college supports student travel to conferences?
Sure. There's a student travel fund. So if they've worked on some research and they can go to these conferences, we'll support them going there with a faculty mentor, and they're able to present. We're sending quite a few down to the Chemical Society meeting, experimental biology, and there was just one for health policy and management as well just last week. And so we're supporting that, and they're working on presentation skills as well.
This gives students an opportunity to work with researchers, or, in some cases, creative professionals around the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that presenting your work at one of these regional or national meetings is something that's really, really valuable and eye-opening to students, because they've done their work on their campus. Maybe they've presented at an in-campus event, or either in their department or at our annual celebration. But to go somewhere and to share what you've done with students and faculty and researchers from all over is really the next level experience. It's a different experience, and it can be really, really invigorating for a student to see all the opportunities out there and all the questions that all these other people are working on. So it's a great learning opportunity, professional opportunity, networking opportunity, and students can really hone their presentation skills by having to explain what they're doing to all these people who I've never heard of it before. And sometimes that can be a challenge, but it's an important challenge for students.
And a great opportunity just to broaden their horizons.
Absolutely.
Sure. Dr. Van Reet, Amy, thank you so much. This has been phenomenal. It's been really great to learn more about all the Center for Engaged Learning is doing at Providence College. Subscribe to the Providence College podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and our newest platform, Spotify. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Thanks for listening, and go Friars.